So now I want to show you how you would switch to the new format um, and what you will have to do, what the steps are that you have to go through to adjust your review. So I'm doing this on the training server. So this is a real review, but if this is your review, don't worry. I'm not changing your actual review. This is just a copy. All right, so before we make the switch, I just want to point out some text that I've added under methods to just illustrate some of the changes that will happen. So what I've done here is I've added some links specifically for this demo. So at the top here, I've just included the plain text of each of those links. But at the bottom, I've got links to how the intervention might work, to primary outcomes, secondary outcomes, risk of bias in included studies, and allocation and selection bias. So there are different things that will happen to each of these sections. So that will kind of illustrate how we deal with when sections move, when sections are change their title, or when they get removed altogether. Okay, so back to the dashboard. I will click this button to enable the focused review format, and I am sure. And it will take a little while to update everything. And now we can see here there's a version tagged before review format changed. So if I need to go back to if I need to back out of this change, then I can by using the revert. But yeah, so the review format has changed now. And if we look at the validation errors and warnings, you'll see some of the things that we will have to do. Some of these were already there. But for example, here, the funding section in abstract is empty. So that is a new section that's been added for which we'll have to write some content. And yeah, so there's some examples of that. We also do not have a supplementary material 1 at the moment. The search strategies are empty. It actually turns out that this is a very old review that didn't have any search strategy appendices. There's also no links to supplementary material 1, 4, and 5 in the text. If we look at the warnings, there's some warnings about empty optional sections, and there's also a warning about broken links, which is in this section where I added these example links. Right, so when you do make the switch, it's important to check your supplementary materials and make sure that they make sense. Yeah, in this example, we do not have any search strategies. So it's definitely something we need to address. RevMan will try to automatically identify all of the appendices that you have that include search strategies and pull them all in. But depending on how you've named your appendices, it may not be able to. So that is definitely something that you should check. In this case, we've got characteristics of included studies, which looks good. Characteristics of excluded studies. We've got an analyses, which also looks quite good. And we've got the data package as well, which I'm not going to show you now because it will open somewhere else and you won't be able to see it. So yeah, that's the supplementary materials. We've got some work to do there. Right, so then if we've linked to any analyses explicitly, usually we'll want to replace those with links to figures. So for example, here I've got my analysis 1.1, and this is an analysis that's important for the main results of the review. So what I need to do is create a figure for it. So I add the forest plot for analysis 1.1. And I can go back to my text and I can replace this link with a link to the new figure. All right, so then if we go to the included studies, you can see here that the link to the characteristics of included studies has automatically been replaced by a link to supplementary material 2. So in this case, it reads okay, so we don't need to do anything further. Okay. So then the headings changes. I've already showed you that there were some validation errors and warnings where we need to fill in text in currently empty sections. So one example of that is in the abstract where we don't have any funding or registration information yet. What can also happen, because we've removed some sections and changed their names, is that you need to update how you're linking within the review. So I'm going to go back to that example that I showed you earlier. So the section, how the intervention might work, is one of those sections that's been removed. So don't worry, we haven't deleted your text. That's still located close to where it used to be in the flow of the review. But we have removed the heading, so this link will no longer work. So what I can do is I can remove the link and I can link to a different section. So heading in the main article. And I'll link to the new section description of the intervention and how it might work, which seems appropriate in this case. So another change is that primary outcomes have been renamed critical outcomes. So that's just a change that RevMan will make for you. And the same goes for secondary outcomes, which has been renamed to important outcomes. Risk of bias in included studies is a section that hasn't changed. So that link still works. But we've removed all of the subsections. So the specific link here to allocation is now a broken link. And I can probably just remove it because I've already linked to this other section. All right, so those are the how you deal with the headings changes, how you deal with the newly introduced supplementary materials. And I already showed you what happens when you mention a study, which is the very first time that you do that, RevMan will automatically include the reference citations for you. But when you're citing references directly, there are some cases now where if you had an existing review that did that, you might need to update the text. So I'm going to go to the background for that because it has an example of that. So this used to say in the 1950s, Gates 1955 trialed the use, and now it says in the 1950s, 21 trialed the use. So that doesn't flow very well. So what we can do in this case is actually move the citation to the end of the sentence. And yeah, we can rephrase this. So for example, in the 1950s, the use of local analgesia, delivery was trialed in 65 women. And then with the findings and our citation at the end. So generally, that's relatively easy to do, but you do need to go through the text and make sure that where you're citing references, that those sentences still flow well. So yeah, like we mentioned when we were going through the prototype review, one thing that you will also want to do is to create an overview of included studies and syntheses table. So that is something that you can add as an additional table. I'm obviously not going to do that now, but this is like where you would go to do it. And if you need some inspiration or you're not sure, there's an example in the prototype review, but I believe there are also examples here in. So this is the intervention review template. This has 5 different examples of how you might want to structure your overview of included studies and syntheses table. Yeah, and as well, like we said earlier, if you are switching to the new format, besides going through the specific things that we just looked at, you might want to go through the intervention review template as well, and just make sure that you're reporting things in the expected place and in the expected way. Yeah, and so the focus review format uses publishing standard reporting guidelines, and for intervention reviews, that's Prisma 2020. And yeah, it's not a radical change to how you write your review, but we do recommend that you look at the guidance and look at the templates before submitting your review.